Here.
Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson.
Oh, you're when you push the button, you're muting yourself. Unmute, then you're muted right now. Push it again. Oh, you're still muted. There you go. Now speak.
Okay, now it says mute on my computer, but okay, here.
Dr. Maxwell.
Here.
Ms. McInturf.
Here.
Mr. Wells.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 voting members present.
I declare a quorum is present and we're duly convened. Without objection, Mr. Mullenhour is excused. At this time, I'll call on our Deputy General Counsel, Danielle Nellis, to read the statement of necessity for our electronic meeting. Danielle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 8-44-108, the Tennessee State Board of Education hereby presents this letter of necessity for a special called board meeting held electronically at 1 p.m. on July 15th, 2024. This meeting was called to consider the time-sensitive approval of emergency rules to implement recent legislation pertaining to student eligibility and facility requirements for residential mental health facilities. Due to the time-sensitive nature of this issue and because the state board members reside across the state, it was determined that a physical quorum of the members could not be assembled in Nashville for the purposes of this special called board meeting, and as such, this meeting should be conducted electronically. Notice of this meeting was posted on the state board website along with the agenda and instructions for accessing this meeting. With that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Nellis. I would like to recognize our newest board member now, Dr. Ina Maxwell, who is appointed by Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, to represent the 6th Congressional District. Dr. Maxwell has a wealth of education experience, and she was serving as the Director of Schools for Cumberland County, as well as being an educator in the classroom too. Dr. Maxwell, we will formally recognize you at our first board meeting, but we welcome you now and provide, if you want to say any words, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chairman Eby. I am grateful to be a part of this, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you. And I just appreciate everyone's help thus far. Thank you so much.
We look forward to your participation and know that you'll bring a perspective that will be important to us all, and welcome. Also, like to give board members and Dr. Morrison an opportunity to say a few words if you want to report on any activities that have been going on since our last board meeting. Dr. Morrison, you want to start?
Oh, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but just top of mind, I was in Washington, D.C., which was also hot, our nation's capital, last week with several of you on the call, Commissioner, Chairman Eby, Vice Chair Cobbins, and several of our staff members at the Education Commission for the States Conference, which is always a great chance to come together with policymakers across the nation. Certainly some interesting sessions and talking with colleagues across the various states. So that was good and energizing. Otherwise, I can't think of anything at the moment that's time sensitive, but that was last week's activities, and I certainly enjoyed that with many of you.
Any other board members like to say anything? I'll just mention that it was the Education Commission of the States conference that we were at, and a couple of things that came out of there. Not only does it give us an opportunity to speak with board members across the country, find out the challenges they have, very similar to some of the ones that we have, but there were a couple of awards given. Our own Dolly Parton was given an award for her Imagination Station reading program. I think they said she's given out over 3 million books. That was pretty special. And then one of the other really valuable talks I thought was maybe the best talk I've ever heard was from the past National Teacher of the Year. Just did an outstanding job. Of course, our own Missy Testerman is the current National Teacher of the Year, and we'll get an opportunity to hear her next year at this. But the lady that did it there, I don't know if that's been recorded or not, but if it is, I would strongly recommend people to watch it. It was a pretty amazing talk. So good meeting, and always valuable conference to attend. All right. I want to remind everybody that since we are meeting electronically, I would ask members to identify themselves as well as in making the motions as secondary motions. If speak up. I will then recognize you and identify yourself. Remember, board meetings policy as well as TCA 844-108 would require all votes to be taken during electronic meetings is be taken by the call of the roll. With that, we'll move on to the first item, which is the consent item, the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
This is Warren Wells. I'll make the motion.
Mr.
Second.
Wells moves and Mr. Cobbins seconds. Vice Chair Cobbins seconds. Any discussion on the agenda? If no discussion, Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Here we go. Mr. Cobbins,
Aye.
Ms. Cox,
Aye.
Mr. Holt,
Aye.
Mr. Jensen,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson, Dr. Maxwell,
Aye.
Ms. McInturf,
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour, Mr. Wells,
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Motion passes. We go on to our first item and only item, action items is residential mental health facilities emergency rule 05200120.02 through 05. Mr. Scott Inamula from the State Board of Education, State Board.
All right.
State
State
Department.
Department of
Sorry.
Education. Yeah.
Right.
Well, good afternoon, board members and Commissioner Reynolds. Good to see you again. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Scott Indermill. I'm Senior Director of IDEA and Non-Traditional Education Programs, and I'm in the Division of Federal Programs and Oversight. So I've been in front of you on a few different topics here, different areas of board rule. State Board of Education Mental Health Facilities Rule 0520-01-20.02 through 0.05 outline requirements for the admission of Tennessee public school students to out-of-state residential mental health facilities in compliance with Tennessee Code 49.3.370. Tennessee Code 49.370B requires local education agencies to allocate state and local funding to out-of-state residential mental health facilities when certain conditions are met. Public Chapter 884 of the 113th General Assembly, enacted in the 2024 legislative session, made the following 3 changes to the conditions for admission set forth in Tennessee Code 49.370. First, the chapter removed the condition that the residential mental health facility serve at least 15 Tennessee students per school year. Second, the chapter removed the condition that the student has an active, individualized education program at the time of the student's placement at the residential mental health facility. Third, the chapter removed the condition that the student be enrolled in and have attended a Tennessee public school for the full school year immediately preceding the student's placement at the facility, and instead requires that the student be enrolled in and attending a Tennessee public school at the time of the student's admission to the facility. Also added a requirement that the student's parents be residents of Tennessee at the time of the student's placement in the facility. Because Chapter 884 went into effect on July 1st, 2024, and out-of-state residential mental health facilities may begin submitting invoices to LEAs immediately, the State Board must promulgate emergency rules to ensure that the conditions for allocating funding to out-of-state residential mental health facilities listed in State Board Chapter 0520-01-20 are aligned with Public Chapter 884, and to ensure that the rules are adjusted to ensure clarity regarding the admission of students both with and without IEPs. First reading of the permanent rule will be brought to the State Board for approval at its August 16th, 2024 quarterly meeting. The Department of Education recommends the approval of this item on first and final reading, and the State Board staff concurs with this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Inamula. So we have a recommendation from the State Department. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Mr. Jensen moves. Is there a second?
Chrissy McInturf, second.
McInturf seconds. Open for discussion. Are there any questions for Mr. Indermill? I have one question. As I look at the changes that were made, what keeps a family from moving into Tennessee? Before you had to the student had to be in school for a full year, and now we pulled that out. So what keeps a family from moving into Tennessee into a district, and then immediately sending their child off to a residential facility that the district then has to bear the burden of that cost? They may not have planned for that during the year, so.
Right. Yeah. And that that is exactly what statute does. It allows a family to move in, establish residency, enroll the student, possibly that same day. And if that student were to be on a physician's order, placed out of state with one of the bordering states to Tennessee, as that remains in statute, that would be a situation where they would put the information into our instrument for review, and they could qualify for those funds to be transferred from the LEA to that out-of-state facility.
So that makes it sort of difficult for the districts to plan for that when dollars are taught. So this is an emergency rule, and we obviously have to follow the law, but it's something I think that needs to be considered in the future.
Just point of clarification, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. Jensen.
Establishing residency, does that simply mean that you move in apartment, or how do you, I'm not familiar with how you establish residency. Just point of clarification.
Sure. Establishing residency would be the same residency requirements that are required for that student to enroll in that LEA jurisdictionally.
Well, I can move in one day and start school. The next day.
That's right.
That was my question.
Based on statute, yes.
Yes, Ms. Johnson.
When we,
Marcia
just a-
Johnson, quick question. Would it still, with the number of divorces that happen across the state at all times, as long as one parent that has, even if it's 50-50 custody, is in the state of Tennessee, that would allow the child to have services?
They would also have to be enrolled in the LEA.
Mr. Jensen, did you have another question?
I had a question related to another matter. If we can bring that, I mean, it's related to this, but once we finish this discussion, I do have a question around the third point about having been enrolled. And we had an issue, as you remember, last year with a similar piece of a statute, but I really want to get an answer to a question, not necessarily today, but I do have a question to ask the staff to check on for me.
Before we move to that, are there any other further discussions on the question that I asked? Go ahead, Mr. Jensen, ask your question.
Well, last year we had a situation with a family here who they had a child that needed to get into a specialty school. And one of the things that we worked on, and I really want a status, was that issue around having been fully enrolled in a school for the prior year. And just, again, I don't need an answer right now, but with regard to any child that's getting special services, is that requirement still in place anywhere else in that regime, if you will? And again, I don't need an answer right now.
Can you ask that question? I didn't totally understand your question. Can you ask it again, please, Mr. Jensen?
So last year we had a family in Memphis that had a child that needed to go to the Madonna Learning Center. And we could not, under the prior rules, he could not go there because he had not been in an LEA for the prior year. And we got that stipulation removed for him in particular. But one of the things we were trying to do is to get that out so that people could get their children who can't afford a year of elsewhere without care. And so I think we addressed it, but I don't know that I know that that was resolved. It's the same point on this, is that you're not requiring a family to have been in a state school for the last prior year before you can get special services. So I just don't know the status, and I'm just curious. I was told that we were going to address that holistically, and I just, sorry, I don't know what the outcome, and that's what I'm asking. Is there an outcome that allows a child who needs special services to get into that without that year prior enrollment. You understand what I'm asking?
I understand the question. Mr. Indomito, do you know the answer to that, or somebody else from the Department of
Yeah.
Education?
I think coming from a different lens, I mean, focused on residential treatment center, a student is going to be able to get placed in state or out state, regardless of the conditions that are involved with the statute or this rule. The rule here itself is just going to be dependent on the conditions being met for the allocation of funding. So was there a funding piece involved with this
No,
situation?
this
Okay.
is a non-residential
Hmm.
place. So,
Right.
but it is not in our LEA. It's a specialty service for a child that needs real serious care. And at the time, at least
IA.
last year about this time, or you remember,
Doc-
Sarah?
It was
Yeah,
Dr. Walt-
just for folks on from the department who might be able to help, because this is regarding the IEA program. So it was a student with special needs who wanted to be served with an IEA grant. And so, yes, my remembrance is that we were able to interpret that in a way that allowed for that child to get services, even though they weren't in for prior year. What I'm not sure of, and I don't know if Nathan or someone from the department would be able to speak to whether that was changed legislatively or how we've been able to kind of address that in this last year's cycle of student applications.
And I'm not asking for an answer today. I'm just raising the question. If we could do some research on that and come back, I would appreciate knowing that in case we do need to do something with it going forward. That I don't need an answer right now.
Yep, we can follow up.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so the motion that we have on the table right now is Residential Mental Health Facilities Emergency Rule 05200120.02 through 05. This will require a roll call vote. Mr. Griffin, please call the roll.
Mr. Cobbins,
Aye.
Ms. Cox,
Aye.
Mr. Holt,
Aye.
Mr. Jensen,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Maxwell,
Aye.
Ms. McInturf,
Aye.
Mr. Mullenhour, Mr. Wells,
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Motion passes. That's the end of our agenda. Before I adjourn the meeting, is there any comments anyone else would like to make before we close? If not, the purposes of the special meeting, called meeting have been fulfilled, and I declare this meeting adjourned. Have a great day.